Hello, you absolute legends. It's been months and I still don't have a decision for my trial against the biggest fraud in video game history, Billy Mitchell. Win or lose, everyone is dying to know what the result will be. And for all we know, a conclusion may still be months away. So in order to hold us over until the judge comes back with his verdict, I thought it would be fun to go back in time and look at what is probably Billy's funniest lawsuit ever. The time he sued Cartoon Network because they made fun of him. This was back in 2015, before the cheating scandals, and before Billy Mitchell was widely known throughout the internet as someone who loves to abuse the legal system. At this time, he was still an extremely niche celebrity that you would only know of if you've ever seen The King of Kong, which quite frankly isn't a lot of people in the grand scheme of things. So when Billy did sue the Cartoon Network and ultimately lost, yes, there were a few articles making fun of him, but I don't think Billy got the attention he really deserved. This lawsuit was incredibly stupid and incredibly petty, and to make matters worse, Billy, in typical Billy form, is now trying to rewrite history by lying about what the lawsuit was about, in order to try and make himself look less ridiculous. But unfortunately for Billy, the court filings are all public record, so I can show you exactly what he said and exactly what happened. So today, let us all collectively point and laugh at Billy Mitchell for throwing a temper tantrum and suing the Cartoon Network because he can't take a joke. I really hope you enjoy. Now legends, a huge shout out to today's sponsor, Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access is an amazing VPN, and if you are still not using a VPN, you are missing out big time. Using a VPN will hide your IP and shield your digital life from those who are looking to exploit your private information. Streaming services like Netflix restrict the content you can access based on your location. But with Private Internet Access, you can change your location to anywhere in the world. For example, if you're in the US, you can't watch The Lord of the Rings on Netflix. But it only takes 2 seconds to change your location to a country like Australia and get immediate access. Watching Netflix without Private Internet Access is like buying an entire pizza but only being allowed to eat a single slice. My country is terrible when it comes to censorship, but with Private Internet Access, I can access whatever I want, whenever I want, as it should be. Private Internet Access is not only really easy to use, but it's also extremely affordable, and a single subscription gives you protection for an unlimited amount of devices. And if you use my link in the description, you'll get a massive 83% discount plus 4 extra months on a 2-year deal. And if you're not happy for any reason, they also offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So again, just click the link in the description and get Private Internet Access today. In February of 2011, a cartoon called The Regular Show aired an episode titled High Score. In this particular episode, the show's protagonists, Mordecai and Rigby, beat the world record on an arcade game called Broken Bones. This world record was previously held by the episode's villain, Garrett Bobby Ferguson, who comes out of the woodwork to reclaim his record and re-establish his dominance. This episode is amazing, and you should absolutely watch it if you haven't already. It's legitimately funny the way they make fun of Billy Mitchell and high score competition in general. It's obviously a parody of Billy and the character he portrayed in the documentary The King of Kong. Garrett Bobby Ferguson, or GBF for short, as we'll call him, is basically how an intelligent, high-functioning, normal individual sees a person like Billy Mitchell when they watch The King of Kong. He's obviously a weirdo, he obviously takes his Donkey Kong scores way too seriously, and he obviously has some kind of evil streak within him. And the way they highlight and magnify these traits in the cartoon is amazing. GBF challenges Mordecai and Rigby to a duel to try and get his world record back, but he ultimately loses and explodes in a fit of rage, covering everyone with goo. I guess Billy didn't know about his little cameo right away, because it would be more than 4 years later when he finally filed a lawsuit in the District Court of New Jersey in July of 2015, claiming that Cartoon Network used his likeness to make money without his permission, and now they owe him. The complaint is really poorly done. It's 12 pages long, and he spends half of those pages randomly listing irrelevant factoids about himself. For instance, January 8, 1983, Billy Mitchell invited to be one of the hand-picked superstars to compete in that incredible video game Olympics. Due to family responsibilities, he must decline. November 24, 1999, Billy Mitchell offered $100,000 to the first person who could get past the Pac-Man split-screen level. The prize was never claimed. Wow, these were definitely worth including. He even co-emceed the 2001 Twin Galaxies Video Game Festival 2 years in a row. Nice copy and paste there, Billy. Billy lists every random interview he's ever done and every random appearance he's ever made or even didn't make because he thinks it makes him look famous. Billy didn't really seem to make a case either. He just asserted that Cartoon Network used his likeness, and because they used his likeness, he is entitled to some kind of compensation. Well, Cartoon Network didn't mess around in their response. 2 months later, they filed a 58-page motion to dismiss. Obviously, I can't go through the entire document because it's far too long. But just reading it, it unintentionally comes across as comedy because of how absurd the situation is. And there is probably a good chance that when the lawyers drafted this motion, they were in fact laughing as they did so. They go into great detail about who Billy Mitchell is and his character in The King of Kong. They then go into great detail about who GBF is, outlining his history and origins and his involvement in the show. The point they were trying to make is that Billy Mitchell is a human being and GBF is an alien from outer space who appears as a disembodied floating head. And because these two things aren't the same, it's an obvious transformative parody that is protected by the First Amendment. They state, simply put, for Mitchell to prevail would require the court to hold that every depiction of a celebrity in a fictional television show, every Saturday Night Live sketch involving a celebrity impersonation, every Simpsons, South Park, Family Guy, or other animated program depicting celebrities or newsmakers and so on is actionable. This is obviously not the law. Mitchell's claim is without merit and should be dismissed. Billy's response to this motion was self-sabotaging and highlights how unintelligent this entire lawsuit was. He states, as explained in Billy Mitchell's declaration, the character in the regular show is a direct rip-off of his image and likeness, only in a very disparaging way. The actions of this character, which Mr. Mitchell has personally observed, make him look like some kind of monster or creature with no heart or decency. This is simply not Billy Mitchell and places him in a very unfavorable light. First of all, this is exactly who Billy Mitchell is. He is a monster with no heart or decency, so in my opinion, the regular show really nailed that particular aspect. But more importantly, what Billy's lawyer is describing here is parody. That's the exact point Cartoon Network made in their motion, and Billy's lawyer is too dense to realize he is arguing against himself. And as we'll see, the judge comments on this exact point. But what's really interesting is what else was said in the declaration of Billy Mitchell that was referenced. Because in his declaration, Billy openly admits that he filed this lawsuit because the regular show made fun of him. Billy states, further, the defendants in their motion candidly admit that the GBF character is based upon me. I filed this lawsuit because of that direct ripoff of my image and likeness, and the fact that the character places me in a very unfavorable light. I don't know who's more of an idiot here, Billy for admitting that this is the reason he filed the lawsuit, or his lawyer for thinking this declaration was a good thing to file with the court. Billy also tried to compare Cartoon Network's use of his likeness with that of the video game Band Hero's use of the band No Doubt. In 2009, No Doubt sued Activision, the publisher of Band Hero, claiming that it was illegally using their likeness in the game. There is a bit of nuance to this particular lawsuit, but the relevant portion that Billy tried to use in his favor was a ruling by an appellate court judge that the game's use of No Doubt did not pass the transformative test and therefore was not protected by the First Amendment. In other words, it wasn't covered by free speech. Billy tried to use this ruling to say that Cartoon Network's use of his likeness should also fail the transformative test, and thus the court should not give Cartoon Network any First Amendment protection. However, in their reply, Cartoon Network correctly argued that the No Doubt example was not applicable. In that case, Band Hero was using literal avatars of the band. They were supposed to be literal representations of the band members, and they were supposed to do the exact thing the band does in real life. In Cartoon Network's case, Garrett Bobby Ferguson was never supposed to be a literal representation of Billy Mitchell. While they do both look familiar, they both play arcade games, and they are both vindictive morons, they are still very different in important ways. And this goes back to their original argument that GBF is an alien from outer space in the form of a disembodied floating giant head, and Billy Mitchell is a human being from the planet Earth. The judge agreed with Cartoon Network and granted the motion to dismiss, therefore throwing the lawsuit out. Her Honor's published opinion is also really funny, and it resulted in some amazing headlines like this one from Ars Technica. Again, the opinion reads as if it's some kind of hilarious joke, but I can assure you the judge wasn't being facetious with her description of the two characters. When Judge Thompson stated in her opinion that GBF appears as a non-human creature, a giant floating head with no body from outer space, while Plaintiff is a human being, it wasn't to be funny. She was just accurately describing the differences between GBF and Billy, because it's extremely relevant to her decision to throw out the case. Speaking on Billy's own mind-numbing admissions, she stated, "Plaintiff himself acknowledges that GBF is not a literal representation of him when he states that the actions of this character make me look like some kind of monster. This is simply not me. A testament to how ignorant of the law Billy is, and the sheer lack of effort by his lawyer to prevent Billy's impressive stupidity from finding its way into his filings." When Billy lost, there were some funny articles written about it, all making fun of him. But it seems as though none of these journalists reached out to Billy to get his opinion, or at least he never gave it. At the time, Billy was a nobody. He was just some loser who fell into notoriety because of the success of The King of Kong, a documentary that someone else far more talented than Billy produced and directed. Billy was just a walking punchline. Unfortunately, however, because no one cared what he thought, we never got to see his reaction to the lawsuit. We never got to hear how Billy would try to spin this. We never learned what kind of crazy story Billy would have tried to tell people to make it seem like he actually won. Well, after remaining silent and avoiding this lawsuit like the plague for many years out of embarrassment, Billy has finally begun to try and slowly change history. And the story he wants to peddle now is that he sued Cartoon Network not because he was butthurt they made a parody of him, but rather because they reneged on an agreement they had with him.
And just to set the record straight on one thing, the one that involved regular show, that had nothing to do with video games at all, didn't it?
Oh no, that was an agreement I made with them. It had to do with intellectual property. They reneged on an agreement, and the court saw it their way, and so it's real easy. The system allows for you to appeal decisions, which is what I would do. But before I did that, or before I would have done that, there was an agreement made. So I don't have any regrets on that, but somehow that becomes important to people all these years later.
Go figure.
I don't mean to sound funny, but I have to stand up for, that which is right and wrong, that which agreements that I make, you know what I mean? I never talk about it. I don't have any bitter feelings about it. I think it's fine.
So apparently, according to Billy's new story, he had an agreement with Cartoon Network which they didn't honor. So he sued them and lost. And then after he already lost, Cartoon Network decided they actually did want his permission after all. This is one of the most insane lies Billy has ever tried to spin. There was no agreement with Cartoon Network, and Billy stated this in his own lawsuit. In fact, his very argument was that he never consented to the Cartoon Network using his likeness. The judge even stated this as one of the facts of the case. And Billy wants us to believe that after Cartoon Network laid the smackdown and manhandled him out of court, they then for some reason changed their mind and wanted to settle with him. Billy is honest to God as intelligent as a 6-year-old if he thinks anyone buys this story. Billy again alluded to this imaginary agreement during one of his Twitch streams in 2023.
Was I pleased with my regular show appearance? Well, considering that the agreement that we originally talked about never happened, it's a bummer.
Gee, you'd think if there was an agreement, Billy might have mentioned that in his original complaint. He wasted 5 pages listing everything he's ever had for breakfast for the past 20 years, but carelessly forgot to add that other small detail that might have been relevant. Another way we know there was no settlement is because there was no public statements from Billy or Cartoon Network at the time. When Billy settled with Guinness World Records, they made a statement. When he settled with Apollo Legend, Apollo made a statement. And when he settled with Twin Galaxies, they both made a statement. Billy's settlements always come with a public statement, and the fact that one is absent here is further confirmation that a settlement never happened. Billy lies because he knows the general public either doesn't know how or doesn't care to fact-check his ridiculous claims. Even if you were to read news articles about this lawsuit, they barely scratch the surface of what was actually stated by both parties. So unless you personally read through these legal filings, you wouldn't really be able to see just how untruthful Billy is when he talks about them. Billy's lawsuit against Cartoon Network was, and always will be, hilarious. But let's be honest, as he himself admitted, Garrett Bobby Ferguson is basically a one-to-one rip-off of Billy. They look almost identical, and they both act like a toddler and throw a temper tantrum when they don't get their way. So don't be too hard on yourself if you ever accidentally call Billy Garrett Bobby Ferguson in person. It's a completely reasonable mistake to make, and I for one would never hold it against you. Thank you so much for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.